Hello and welcome to another episode of Porous Borders. This is episode 9, and today on the show I am talking to Joel Saunders. Joel is a Brisbane-based musician who I've known for a couple years now, and I have a huge amount of respect for him. He's quite active in Brisbane's improvised music scene, playing in a band called Feet Teeth. And for a few years he was curating a monthly series of experimental improvised music nights called Upper Partialism. He's also an incredible songwriter, and you can hear this in his band A Country Practice, which he formed a couple of years ago with his brother Andrew and his wife Kelly. And A Country Practice has just released a new single called The Inundation Into Our Room, and you can check that out on Bandcamp. Joel also plays circuit-bent synths and Commodore 64 in the band Spirit Bunny, and anyone who has seen them play live can tell you that his dance moves are incredible. A couple of years ago, Joel also played trumpet on a recording for my band Leavings, but that's still unreleased at this point, and I will update you if that surfaces at some point in the future. This conversation was recorded in Brisbane quite a while ago now, back in September of 2019. A few days earlier, I had played a show with A Country Practice, and it was my first time seeing them. And friend of the pod, Keely Young, also played that show, and it was a very nice night. So it was a really nice opportunity to talk to Joel, having seen him play a couple of nights earlier. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Please share it with your friends. Please check out my 5-way split with DJ Miko, Coffee Faith, Mahamboro, and Dissonant. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Concrescence Records. I'm putting new stuff up there every week. And if you want to say hi or suggest someone I should talk to, you can email me at porousborderspod@gmail.com. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Joel Saunders.
All your tin roofs will not survive the torrential downpour and the telephone poles on fire. It's a wanting 5-year storm tonight.
Yeah. When did you come to Brisbane?
For university.
Okay.
So for me that was 2003.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you, were you doing music in Gatton, or did you?
Yeah. So everyone in my family played music at home and at school and stuff. So we had a lot of instruments in our house, piano, guitars, bass guitar, and then a lot of kind of classical stuff, sax, flute, trumpet. So I think, that sort of, that area of Queensland, lots of, there was always music Eisteddfods,
Right.
Battle of the Bands. When I was in high school, I started a really bad band with some school friends in grade 11 and 12 and stuff, and we played at the local skate park for Youth Week one year.
Okay,
and stuff
yeah.
like that. So
What was that like, that band?
that band was quite, terrible, but I played bass in that band for 2 years, I think. And I learned how to trying to record some of our songs.
Right, yeah.
And we played at the few opportunities there were to play in a small country town. But the good thing is, everyone, all of us in the band, we all lived in houses where there was huge garages or no neighbours for, hundreds of metres, so you could play really loudly. And so it kind of made playing in a band easy, except that I suppose we had to get our parents to drive us to band practice because we would live, 20 kilometres from each other and stuff.
Yeah, right, because in those, I've been to Gatton once, and they have one of those big regional public schools, right?
Yep.
So everyone comes from
That's right. So
different
my
towns.
friends, some of them would live like, some of them would live like within town, but other friends lived so far away they were off the grid entirely with their family. They lived maybe 30 to 40 kilometers away.
Wow.
So they'd get driven down a dirt road by their parents, maybe, I don't know, 20 minutes, and then dropped off once it became a sealed road, and then the school bus would come and pick them up and stuff. So yeah, some kids came from quite a distance. There were probably more kind of regional schools as well, but there weren't many in that area, for high school particularly. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and what was your first project when you came here? Were you just playing solo, or you?
Oh, in Brisbane.
Yeah.
So, I did a lot of just sort of solo. Not a lot. I did a small amount of solo or duo, like electronic music, noise sort of stuff with friends. But then my first thing that was really me playing music was playing ukulele and singing in kind of like a noise folk duo.
Okay.
Yeah, little lo-fi kind of folk thing.
What was the name of that?
Ambitious Lovers.
Ah, yeah.
So that was sort of what I started in 2005 maybe, and that was partly, I don't know, I was sort of studying music, so I was surrounded by lots of overly talented people, but listening to a lot of sort of outsider and lo-fi music, not really finding there was a lot of disconnect between those two parts of my life. And so starting this project was kind of an attempt to, I don't know, challenge myself by singing and doing songs, because I hadn't really done that forever. I actually found that more dangerous, I suppose, more scary than playing noise music or electronic improvised music.
Okay. So you studied music at uni?
Yeah, I did.
And you went the whole way through?
Yeah, I finished.
Yeah, cool. What was that like? Like, were there a lot of people doing the kind of stuff you were doing in that program, or was?
Yeah, not really. I felt like quite an outsider to an extent. It was an unusual time because I think the universities were trying to position themselves as open-minded and progressive. So they were letting in, they were trying to let people get a university degree in music who would have no traditional or classical musical training. And so they were kind of quite proud of the fact that you could finish a university degree without being able to read and write notation.
Right.
So they were so that was one side of it. But there was still like a degree of polish that was expected. Yeah. And so, yeah, it was just an unusual time, I suppose. I got turned on to bands like the Shags by lecturers who accidentally would be like putting up images of them in the middle of a talk on classical composition. So it was kind of this, so there was kind of this weird, thing going on where there were people who, there were academics within the courses who were quite, I suppose, conservative. There were people whose creativity I didn't really admire very much at all, and then there were other people who were great thinkers about music but weren't particularly, what they actually made was just not that interesting to me. So I think, I don't know. And I think a lot of the people studying music were disconnected from the local music scene.
Right.
And I don't... Yeah, and that wasn't very healthy either. Like, it wasn't... Yeah, people didn't realise that they could just go 200 metres down the road and play a gig in the valley. They thought they had to get their thing totally sorted out, and then they'd be allowed to finally play at the Paddington open mic night. You know, I don't know. It was just a very... Yeah. But there was also a lot of cross-pollination between, like, different types of arts, as well as between classical musicians and composers and improvisers and stuff. So, you know, there were some positives as well. Yeah.
So, Ambitious Lovers started in 2005.
Around then.
Is that still active? That program?
No, definitely not.
Yeah, okay. I remember, like, I guess I was, like, finishing up high school around then, and I remember seeing the name on posters and stuff, but I never saw you play. I think I did see you play solo, maybe.
Yep. Yeah, so probably,
point.
I don't know, maybe 2007, I reckon I probably started playing solo. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're doing song-based stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So,
then
yeah,
as
that
well.
whole period, I think I was only really doing song-based music from kind of like 2005 to 2010, because I think I was finding to do improvised music was often an easy option for me at that time, so I didn't want to explore that. I was finding it really kind of challenging for me to play song-based music. I think there's a lot of room within songs, and I think there was a lot of I suppose I've always been most interested in music that's finding a space between songs and experimentation. So, yeah.
What was it about improvisation? Like, I think I hear a lot of people who have been doing it for a long time feeling like they kind of have a thing or a few tricks that they keep using over and over. Was it that kind of thing?
Yeah,
or?
definitely. I think you'd go to some show and people would kind of lock into like a rut, and then they just sit in that rut for quite a while, and then 40 minutes later would stop. I think there were definitely some people performing around that I'd see that would blow my mind within the improvised world, but I think there were also people. So, like, I'm thinking of Anthony Pateris, and he was working with this other guy at the time. Robin Fox, that's who it was.
Okay,
It was mostly Robin Fox and her. Yeah, Robin Fox and Anthony Pateris. And like, I remember seeing a show of theirs where they played like 6 pieces in 20 minutes. When normally you'd go and see someone and they'd play 1 piece in 20 minutes. And like, it felt like going to see like punk rock being played by improvisers. Like, there was just something quite challenging about that. I think everyone else was, coming up with one idea and then playing it for 20 to 40 minutes, and that would be all they could do.
Yeah.
And then these guys somehow managed to say, well, no, why can't I just play an idea for 2 minutes and then stop and like enjoy that 2 minutes of ideas. But I think in improvised music, it takes you so long to get started.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like, people needed 20 minutes because it took them the first 10 minutes to turn their instruments on and finally find a sound. I don't know. And I feel like that's how it seemed like in the scene at the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're playing with different people.
Yeah,
every time. It's like, I feel like, so, like, I don't know, like a thing that happens in Southeast Asia a lot with improvised music is putting 2 people who have never played together.
Yeah, right.
Together. And sometimes it's really interesting, and particularly if they're pretty experienced.
Yep.
But yeah, sometimes I feel like they spend the whole time they're playing just working each other out.
Yeah.
And it would be more interesting if they'd done that privately and then played or something.
Yeah, that said though, I did like spend like a good 18 months with another friend curating monthly improv nights in the last 2 years. And that was, for me, that was what it was all about. It was all about putting 2 people together, ideally from 2 different scenes who may never have even met, and see what happens. And it was really a mixed bag. Like, some performances were amazing, some were really average. But to me, I think it was a little bit more exciting than putting the same 5 people in the same room together each week to roughly play the same improvised piece.
Sure, yeah.
But also, with that project, I was really interested in trying to get people to improvise within kind of aesthetics, if that makes sense. So, like, I'd get someone who was a drone metal artist to come and improvise with someone who was playing kind of improvised blues music, and see what sort of drone blues we can get out. So I think that, so I think that's definitely, I'm still not saying I'm opposed to improvised music or anything, but at that point in my creative practice, I wasn't really interested in doing it. If I was, I'd still go and see it, but I wasn't really wanting to do it myself.
So what came next after?
So I was playing all that sort of song music, sort of solo, and also in Ambitious Lovers until about 2010. I went overseas for 6 months or so in 2010. So I tried to finish all my projects. I really wanted to not have them continue. Very briefly in that period of time, I started a improvised noise hip hop band that was really exciting. But it was like there's probably up to 13 people in that band, but you'd never know who would turn up for each show. I didn't really have very many friends who I would say were good rappers, so that made it really hard to do. Because I really didn't want to make instrumental hip hop. I really wanted to make hip hop.
Yeah.
It was like noisy and improvised. This was like way before Death Grips and stuff, but this was doing. But I was also really interested by like Dalek and Food for Animals and stuff like that. So I was definitely So I was exploring those sort of ideas, but that was painful trying to get people together each time that we played a show because they were always very, last minute. Anyway, so I went overseas, came back and started a few other projects. I started a project called Feet Teeth that was originally a duo and then it became a trio of improvised sort of noise jazz, I suppose. And then simultaneously tried to start some sort of pop project on the side. Initially, I had a project called Mahal Kita, which was also had a lot of potential but fell apart pretty quickly. I think I was trying to play outside of my ability, which is what I've probably been doing all my life, but this was particularly bad at that. Which I was trying to do like electronic pop music sort of stuff. And then that sort of turned into Spirit Bunny, which was probably the first time I felt like I was playing music with other people and we were all sort of on the same page and like playing to people's strengths rather than generally playing to people's weaknesses, which is something I'm also kind of happy to do. But Spirit Bunny was sort of the first time, I suppose, I feel like Spirit Bunny was sort of what I tried to do as a solo artist being succeeded.
Right.
Because I had musicians around me who were far better than me, but also interested in kind of the same aesthetic, if that makes sense.
So what year did Spirit Bunny start?
2013, I reckon.
Okay.
Early 2013. It took us a long time to get going.
Yeah.
The very first, Spirit Bunny started, we probably rehearsed pretty strongly, like weekly, which is very regular for any bands I've ever been in, for like 2 or 3 months. It started out with no real, like loose ideas about what we were going to do. I played guitar for the first jam.
Right.
Because I originally thought maybe I'd play my solo stuff, but with these two people, with Cam and Kate. But very quickly I realised I had a keyboard that I hadn't played in any other bands that I'd circuit bent, and I was really keen to play it, so I brought that out. We played our first show maybe like 6 months later, because people had heard that we were doing something. They thought that maybe we were an improvised band, and so we got asked to play this show that Room 40 was putting on, actually, like with Pale Earth and this guy from Sweden or somewhere. And we played the worst and best show I've ever played, I reckon. Like, Cam, none of us spoke to each other afterwards. It was like we had 4 songs we intended to play. We barely made halfway through one song, and it was just so loud. We all just started playing random noise on top of each other. Like, it totally disintegrated into this cacophony of noise. And then like 15 minutes later, we stopped. And then we never spoke again, probably for 2 or 3 months.
Wow.
None of us had the courage to ask whether we wanted to keep playing music together. And then finally something happened and we got back together and we were like, we probably could do this if we actually practiced again. Let's try it again. And then the next show, like, it took us probably 5 or 6 shows before we could actually play our songs without falling apart. Because for that period of time, Kate and I had been playing a lot of improvised music in Feet Teeth.
Yeah.
Cam had not played improvised music, so he found it really frustrating that we would forget our parts really quickly and then just go off on a tangent. But also, I think, like, we were not used to playing with the sheer volume of Spirit Bunny. Like, all those early shows would have been at the waiting room, which was really loud a room to play in, and so we'd play these sets that we'd rehearsed relatively quietly, and then all of a sudden, like, we couldn't hear each other, and so Cam would play louder to compensate, and then we'd play louder and just get louder and louder and less song-based and more weird. And So
since then, you've released an album.
With Spirit Bunny,
Yeah.
And you're working on new stuff? Or?
Yeah, very slowly. We're a very slow band to work on things. Like, it took us, I don't know, 2 or 3 years to write that first record. We work very collaboratively. It's probably it's the only democratic project I've ever been in that sense. So the three of us get together in the studio and we write, and then 2 weeks later maybe we rehearse again, and then we write a little bit more. So it's very, very, very slow for me. But it's good in the long run. But it pays off. But yeah, so we're slowly working on a second record now.
Yes.
Kind of like maybe a third of the way through.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, I suppose you have 3 very strong musical voices in that band. Like, no one's really...
Yeah, definitely. I think that can make it really difficult to come to consensus, but also can be really powerful when I think we all hit it off on one idea. If we all agree on something, I suppose it's a very strong... And 3 is good, I suppose, for democracy. You know?
Yeah.
So it's very easy to have... If there's 2 people who agree on it, then the other person has to probably come around to it eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you're doing a country practice.
Yep.
How did that band start?
That was really... Like, I've always tried to have something loud and aggressive and something not loud and aggressive going simultaneously. I find that really healthy. I find Spirit Bunny gigs can be really draining. If it's either really good and really powerful and you get a real buzz from it, or it can also be really draining if you're playing with other loud bands that you don't really like as people or as musicians, which we try not to do very often. We try and only play gigs that we're really happy with doing. But, you know, there's something really relaxing about playing a show with 2 or 3 other really pleasant people playing really pleasant music. And so, and you can play smaller venues, you can play quieter venues. I really enjoy that. So, a country practice started when my younger brother came back from being overseas for a brief period of time, and I knew he'd been writing some music, but I also knew that he had never played gigs and never done anything with it. So I asked him if he wanted to do some stuff with me. Originally, and he's a much better keyboard player than I am, and I was really keen to try the same circuit bent keyboards that I use in Spirit Bunny try them out in like in a slower environment, I suppose, where there's more time to sort of experiment with what the timbres are that are possible. I think Spirit Bunny, it's so fast. Like, you have to sort of set the sound and then just deal with it. Whereas in a country practice, there's a lot more time to sort of let a sound develop over the course of a song. And so we started playing each other's songs and taking turns between guitar and keyboard. And originally we were using like just a little drum machine. And then before we'd even played a show, Kelly was like, well, why don't you let me play drums? And so we let her play drums.
Cool.
Because she'd been playing drums with me in Mahalkita. She'd played drums with me in Ambitious Lovers. And so it sort of made sense. But I really wanted a very like electronic drum sound. So it kind of works out nicely. Like, it's pretty much utilizing all the sounds from Spirit Bunny. Like, it's the same drum triggers as Spirit Bunny, same keyboards as Spirit Bunny, but using them in a totally different context. And I feel like that's exciting to like show how these sounds have that diversity about them, I suppose. Yeah.
So I saw you guys play for the first time the other night. It seems like you have a lot of songs at this point.
We're churning. I think that's
because you have 3 songwriters.
Or two. And it's very different from Spirit Bunny in that sense, in that we can just keep writing. We don't have to be together to write. And a very small number of the songs kind of come over from Ambitious Lovers, stuff that never got finished, or even my solo stuff. But, both, definitely. But I think it's also another, I think, taking, I suppose, what I tried to do with my solo stuff and what I tried to do with Ambitious Lovers and actually succeeding with it. Not that I'm ashamed of those projects, but I feel like it gives them a world that I think is probably a better place for them to sit those songs.
Sure,
yeah.
Do you like have a, what am I trying to say? Like, do you play trumpet in Feet Teeth?
Yep.
And you play a few different things in country practice and electronics and Spirit Bunny. Do you have a primary instrument, I guess, or a primary like role in a band usually, or?
No, definitely not. I wouldn't feel like that, because I don't think, like trumpet is what I studied. I played through school, so it's, but trumpet's really hard to play if you don't practice regularly. Like physically, you actually need to warm up and things like that, which I really don't like doing. I hate practicing.
Yeah, I played trombone in high school, and I was working at a school for a little while that was really small, and they said like, oh, you should play in the band with us.
Yep.
Because I let it slip at some point. So they gave me one.
Nice.
And it had been like maybe 7 or 8 years.
Yep.
And I just couldn't do it anymore. It's like all over. It's like starting from square one.
Definitely. Whereas, keyboards and guitars, you don't need to do it as much. But yeah, I don't know. Like in Spirit Bunny, I'm the worst player on every instrument. You know, like Cam can play keyboards better than me, and probably, and Kate's a professional. You know, she's like an amazing percussionist as well. And so, I'm not the best singer in the band either. So like, it's weird. I just kind of do it. Yeah, I suppose I initially started singing and playing an instrument because it was what I wasn't doing, and it was I found it more intimidating to be on stage having to sing. I much would have preferred to be on stage playing quiet noises in the background of someone else's songs. But I really enjoy the process of songwriting. So I don't know where I answered that, but except that, I definitely don't think I'm a master of any of it. But I find by doing a lot of things poorly, you can kind of cover yourself up. Yeah. And particularly if you if you're interested in recording, which I really enjoy that process of like layering things and trying out new sounds and whatever. Like you can kind of get by if you're so at your instrument. You don't have to play it once, okay. And if you play it twice and they're both times are pretty rough, it kind of sounds interesting, I'd rather that. So yeah.
So do you record I guess Cam would record?
Yeah, so Spirit Bunny all gets recorded at Cam's studio, and so far everything we've done like mixed by him and mastered by him. A country practice I record at home and Cam mixes it just because I really respect his ears and his insight. I also really don't like mixing my own music. Though I've done that a lot in the past. So all the Ambitious Lovers stuff was, and most of my solo stuff was all recorded and mixed by me. But I have a job now. I don't need to do it economically. Yeah. I have friends that's their passion and that's what they try and make a living out of doing. So it's kind of nice to pay people to do a job that they're good at doing. But I also don't enjoy being recorded by other people. I find it's really intimidating to be playing guitar in a studio with someone who's a better guitarist than you, or singing when someone's a better singer than you and they're listening to your bad take after bad take. Wrong rhythm, wrong tuning, over and over again. Whereas at least if I do it at home, like if it's terrible, I can just delete it. No one else has to know. Yeah. So.
I'm totally like that with singing. It's awful doing it when someone's watching you. Yeah. It's super vulnerable too, I guess.
Definitely, and which is what excited me about singing. But when you're doing it in a performance, it's very different to doing it in a studio where, like, people are going to nitpick every little bit of your performance. Yeah. And it's so, like, all those like there's that progression with a voice. Like, do you like an authentic voice versus, you don't want to sound like you're putting something on, but at the same time, you don't want to, there are voices that are really dull and boring because, it's like, I think finding your voice is a really difficult part of singing as well. Yeah. So you can't just, well, you can, but you don't just buy another pedal, now I've got my guitar tone.
Yeah.
So.
Got to do it a lot.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about teaching and how you balance that with doing so many projects.
Yeah. I think it's I got into teaching because I was under the impression, and I still am, that it's a relatively good job to have and to balance a creative pursuit. I know a lot of people who are somewhat related to teaching, either were teachers who were in the music industry or still are teachers. Yeah, one of the first people I met who was a teacher and a performing musician was like the cellist for like Holly Throsby and Darren Hanlon and a bunch of other people.
Right.
And I was chatting to him after a show. We'd played together, and he was like, "Yeah, this school just lets me take a day off here now. I go on tour and come back and go back to teaching the kids." And I was like, "Oh yeah, maybe I could do that." Hasn't worked out quite that fluid for me, but it does work relatively well. It also can give you sort of stimulus to come home and work with. But also it's separate enough from your working life to your creative life. Like I don't teach music, or I very rarely teach music to kids, so I find that means I don't have to sort of tick the boxes of what they would think is acceptable music when I make my own music.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, there's a few different like technical things I want to ask you about. Maybe I could start with curating Upper Partialism. How did that start?
Yeah, so it started. So it was pretty much a feet teeth project that merged more into just Paul and I. Paul's the drummer in Feet Teeth. Kate's sort of plays. Originally, she played marimba vibraphones, but then moved to pretty much just playing Commodore 64. So it started because surprisingly, no one was booking us any gigs. So we started putting on shows. Paul was living in this really rundown house in the middle of West End that he was paying hardly any rent for. But in the house, he had like a massive undercroft. So we put on shows there. It was right next to a lot of businesses, so no one was living there, and the apartments were like heavily soundproofed that were there. So we could pretty much do anything. And so that's what we did. We probably put on like 4 or 5 shows there. It was really dusty, but a lot of fun. And we'd put on these... and we also were getting bored with playing just the 3 of us. And so we did like a double album, I suppose, or 2 albums where we had a whole bunch of other musicians come and join us. We had Eric Griswold, who's an amazing kind of prepared pianist from Clocked Out Duo and stuff. He came and played. Carl Montecone, who plays now in Jive Canyon, came and played with us. Timothy Tate, Andrew Tuttle. So we had all these people came into a studio because we got free studio time for a day. So we had them come in and play with us for a day. And we really enjoyed that process. But we couldn't really... no one was going to let us book shows easily. But we had, I had a PA, we had a space. And it's really easy to put on a show with a large ensemble if you've got a big underneath of a house. And you just feel, like there'd be 30 people in the audience, but 10 of them were playing that night. So it was really, everyone just sort of set up and people could come and go and play whenever they want. So we were doing that for, a couple of months and really enjoying it. It was really easy. And then I have a feeling maybe Paul lost his lease there. And around about the same time, people at Common House, which is like an anarchist space, were happy for us to put on shows there for no cost, and they ran a little donation bar. So we started doing that monthly on a Monday, and we talked a bit about what our agenda was. We were really keen to make sure it wasn't a place where we just played every week or every month, and so that was kind of one of the initial agendas. And I suppose between the 3 of us, we all had different ideas about what we wanted it to be. I was really big on making sure it was a space where people who weren't thought of in the improvised music scene were able to play. I was also really keen on it being as much as possible about people playing with other people that they weren't used to playing with. And also, I was also really excited by the idea of making people sort of improvise in a context. So I did a night where we had people like Helen from Makisco and Keely from Rakan and Cloud, Claude, how do you say that? Claude, probably, play like folk music. So they did a cover of this like African spiritual motherless child, cover probably for the wrong word, like an interpretation, and an interpretation of I think it was Pale Blue Eyes by the Velvet Underground, but doing it within the context of improvised music. And to me, that's more or as exciting that like you're sitting there in this room and over the course of, 20 minutes, 12 minutes into it, someone starts singing like a traditional folk song. Like why don't you do that in improvised? If it's improvised, if it's free, you should play whatever you want to play, or at least whatever you get told to play. So that's kind of like what I felt was really exciting. We did another show where we played Johnny Cash's Ain't No Grave in the middle of like this cacophony of drone and doom. It was, to me, they were really exciting musical moments, as was it really exciting when we just had, 2 or 3 people playing together that worked really well. So that's kind of where the agenda was and what the idea was. And we managed to get people to pay a small amount of money to come in, and we got to pay some people. We managed to get people coming from overseas. We had just by chance, we had quite a strong connection with sort of Scandinavian kind of countries because one person came and played and had a good time. They made, $20.
Right, yeah.
Managed to say, countries over there, people managed to get government grants to come and play like a totally DIY space, and somehow they could call it a legitimate tour, and then they'd go down to Melbourne and play Make It Up Club and play some festival in Canberra or something. So, it was a lot of work, but also really, really enjoyable. And there were definitely months there where, it was like getting close to the gig and we hadn't organised anything and people would pulling out or, whatever. But, and there were times when the audience was really great and big, for a noise gig on a Monday night, and there were other times when it felt kind of a bit small and haphazard. But that's, I suppose, the nature of curating something like that. Yeah.
Is it done now? Is it on hold or?
Yeah, I think it's more or less done. I think it was kind of also a period where there was a lull in DIY spaces in Brisbane, real bad, or all the stuff that Breakdance the Dawn, Matt Earl and people like that were putting on had stopped for a period, and has still have stopped. It was before Carl and Adam had started Boom Vacuum. So it was sort of like this period where there wasn't as much going on. Even Lawrence English was doing less stuff with Room 40. And so it kind of made sense to do things. And we were getting people asking us to play who otherwise weren't getting shows. But I think in some ways there's been a real healthy revival of other spaces at the moment, and other people curating nights. And so, it doesn't feel as necessary. Yeah. And it was nice to have. It's nice to have a break. Yeah. From doing something like that.
You can get burnt out pretty quick doing that stuff.
Yeah. Even simple things like, to save money, we didn't ever use their PA, or we didn't try and use the venue PA. We dragged our own PA in. That gets tiring. Yeah. Dragging it in, then packing it down on a Monday night, getting home at 10:30, going to work the next day. Yeah.
Were there any particularly memorable pairings of musicians you had in that time?
I really enjoyed those ones that I talked about where there were people playing song-based stuff. Yeah. Some other pairings that were really nice. There was some stuff we did. One of the first show maybe we did in that space at Upper Partialism was with this. Was the first international person we'd had playing, which was Christian Svendensen or something from Norway. He was an amazing double bass player. Right. And he did some stuff with Eric Griswold, and did some stuff with, maybe Carl on guitar and a few other people, and they were really, really great. We tried to document as much of it as possible. That was the other sad thing, is that things like that would stop working, and so you wouldn't be able to listen back to it, because there was some other great shows that slipped my mind right now. Yeah. I kind of liked also how it was just in that moment and then it moved on as well. But there was a night that was somewhat hip-hop-y based, and that was really fun to see people like X and O, Monster, and Rowan the Intern jamming. Again, people who all make somewhat similar music, but they're all in slightly different scenes.
Yeah.
They're all kind of crossed into improvised music at different times, but it was kind of nice for them to do it together, and I really enjoyed that night. Yeah.
Cool. I wanted to ask like about the different ways I guess we covered it a little bit, but just like, I suppose like handling, like band dynamics or something like that, how it's different between so is Feet Teeth still pretty active or?
No, we're not super active. I don't think we've played this year together. I think we probably played once or twice last year. It was sort of a project where if someone asked us to play, it doesn't take us a lot to get going again.
Yeah.
But at the moment, Paul has started getting pretty heavy into some solo laptop music, which is really exciting because when we started Feet Teeth, the two of us, he'd come from a pretty... from a very strong jazz background. That was kind of his thing. And through the course of doing Feet Teeth together, his mind kind of got expanded significantly, and now he plays sort of solo noise laptop music, which is a world away from jazz standards that he was playing before, and original jazz stuff that he was writing. And Kate's pretty busy between work and Spirit Bunny and life stuff for her.
Yeah.
So yeah, Feet Teeth not doing a lot. But yeah, it's kind of like a purely anarchy democracy kind of model. Like we might talk a little bit about what we just played after we play it, but we don't have to kind of dissect it too much.
Yeah.
We've done things where we play like improvising games when we rehearse and stuff, where we like each have to play for 2 minutes and then pass a sound or whatever. So we do things like that every now and again when we get stale in our history. And we've done works where we've collaborated with dancers and video artists and poets. And for doing those sort of works, we've sort of had to be a bit more planned and organised and communicate a lot more about process and stuff. Spirit Bunny is a fairly band in a room kind of songwriting project. But there's a lot of potential for us to explore different ways of working, and I think we've started doing that of late. So where we might do a random jam and edit that down and try and find workable parts out of that, and then other times we'll work a riff over the course of a week or two. Most of the lyrical content, and even some of the musical content that I come up with, I do at home because I find it, even though I do improvised music, I'm not as fast as Kate or Cam at coming up with ideas that I'm really happy with. Partly it's because the keyboards that I play, because it's all circuit bent, there's sort of an endless amount of timbres that I'm at my disposal, endless, but also heavily limited by being 1985 toy keyboard. So I've got this kind of palette that I can work with. And so I kind of have to go, this is the sound that I want, but there's no clear way of getting there. It's not like using a synth where you can go I want a sound with a sharp attack and blah, blah, blah. I can't just do that. I've got to kind of randomly patch cables together and see what happens. And then that might inspire a sound that I'll play and whatever. And the early Spirit Bunny stuff, a lot of those lyrics were all done through cutting up texts and gluing them together random ways and stuff, which is something I'd never done before, but it sort of fit that aesthetic. So that's how, whereas country practice works. I'll go away for a weekend and just take my guitar and just write and just see what happens. And but again, that project, we're sort of getting interested in what happens if we at least start writing all together. I think it'll help. It results in songs that drums play a bigger part or keyboards play a bigger part. So I think that's the other thing that I'm very aware that process impacts the end result. And so if you can manipulate your process, you can get a different result with the same material, if that makes sense. What happens if you start, if Spirit Bunny writes a song in Ableton built around loops, which is not how we work at all, but actually something we're kind of interested in experimenting with, because why couldn't our music? Our music is loop based, and at times, and we could be making it all with one guy on a laptop.
Yeah,
We're glad we don't, but
Yeah, yeah.
why not pretend we are initially, and then try and learn how to unplay our songs again? Yeah.
Is country practice like? Does the songwriter kind of dictate how the arrangement, or is it?
Yeah, to an extent, definitely. But I think I suppose there's that fine line, like in any project, where it's not a songwriter, it's not, Bob Dylan and the band, like we all have a right to have a say, even if it is someone else's song. And I think Kelly's probably like the strongest force for making sure that it's democratic. And she'll walk out of a song if she doesn't get to play anything,
Right,
and which is totally fair enough.
Yeah.
Whereas I suppose because Andy and I have songwriting practices and that's what we do, we don't feel so bad if we just sit there for 3 minutes and play 2 notes.
Yeah.
But she'll be like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
If you want to play a song like that, don't bring it to the band. I'm like,
right.
okay. All right. You can only bring songs to the band that, have a space for her or kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I suppose that's an enjoyable challenge for any songwriter to be like, to write something that's complete but also has space, I think is really crucial. And it ends up with far more interesting songs if you have a finished product but there's still that 20% space for someone else to come up with an interesting, counter melody, or to come up with a beat that's going to change the feel of the song. And
I wanted to ask you a bit about Brisbane and what it's like to make music here, and what you like about it, and how you've seen it change maybe.
Yeah, definitely. I think what I like about Brisbane is the size of it. Like I don't think people realize how lucky we are. Probably 2 people who give us access to amazing free music are like Tim from Tim's Guitars and Lawrence from Room 40. Like I don't think other cities have those.
Yeah.
Like we get a show that other people have to pay for.
Yeah.
And so that's an amazing thing that we are really lucky to have. And you can just go to these shows, small room, and see someone incredible from overseas. That's one thing I really love about Brisbane at the moment. I also really love in-stores and records shops. We're really lucky. I didn't know which in-store to go to last weekend. Like that, that's a weird problem to have. Like it was a Sunday afternoon, and I wanted to go into the valley to see Francis Plain from Melbourne play and Kitchen's Floor play. But I also wanted to go down to the park in West End where Jet Black Cat had put on Sanford the Great.
Yeah.
And in the end I went and danced to Sanford the Great,
Yeah.
which was so much fun. But they were free shows on a Sunday afternoon and not tied to like a business trying to make money, which, I have friends that run bars and stuff, I think that's really important as well, that they can make a living. But, it's great that we have a music scene that's quite diverse in that way.
Yeah. And I feel like those are so important for the all ages side of it, for kids to be able to go and
Definitely.
Even though not many do, I think.
Yeah,
I just remember when I was in high school, everything was in a bar.
Yeah.
Apart from the occasional free show like that.
Yeah.
And when something was coming up, it was so exciting that I'd actually get to go and see something.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing though around the all ages gigs, and then the all ages don't turn up to it.
Yeah.
And I find that's a little bit sad, and I wonder what it is that's stopping younger kids from going to those shows, because they do go to the shows. They go to see Park Life Drive play at the River Stage or whatever, and so and obviously I know my parents weren't probably that keen on me heading out to see gigs too often, but I went to the one all ages show that happened in Gatton, and it was amazing. There were 6 of us there. It was in the town hall, and I saw Brisbane emo bands came down and played.
Yeah, right.
And even if it wasn't the best music, the fact that it happened in my town and was I paid $2 or something to get into this gig, and then there was Pashido for sale. You know?
Yeah.
It was so good, and the kid who put it on wasn't even, I don't know, didn't get the respect from her peers that they would even turn up, and I thought it was really sad. Anyway, back to Brisbane though. I don't know. I think part of it is that kids need to play all ages gigs as well to be
Yeah.
invited. I think the inner city is hard for kids to play music in. I know of one group of kids that I've taught that now play punk music,
Right.
but I know lots of kids who sing and dance, and I imagine there's a whole bunch of them playing like Flume style electronica in their bedroom with their headphones on. But there's not, it's hard to play music when you don't have a garage, when you have neighbors. It's hard to even practice your instrument, let alone to play with other musicians. So I think it's, this week I think it's Girls Rock happening in Brisbane. So like things like that I think are going to have an impact in the long run of getting kids to play music with other people as well, not just in their bedrooms by themselves. Brisbane, I think we're really lucky because as a musician, you're really lucky because when artists do come into town to play, there's not as many other bands vying to play with them. So when I was starting out with Ambitious Lovers, I was incredibly fortunate. The first time I played with an international artist was opening for Low, who were like my favorite band. And like, I wouldn't have got that chance in Sydney or Melbourne. I don't even know why I got that chance in Brisbane, to be honest. But like, it was really fortunate. And so, particularly in those period, like between 2005 and 2010, I got to play with some of like the most exciting musicians from overseas in Brisbane. And I don't think that would have happened in Sydney or Melbourne for me. I think the last 10 years have been less like that, but that must be because I don't know what exciting music is coming through town anymore. Maybe I'm out of touch. But I also feel like a lot of the music that I'm really excited to see doesn't, I don't know, but they can't pull a bigger crowd in Brisbane anymore. And so they might skip Brisbane, or when they do come in Brisbane, they've got to play a much smaller venue, and they can only have like a solo artist supporting or whatever. So, which is a shame, but that's sort of where it is.
Why do you think that is, that they can't pull a bigger crowd anymore?
I think probably just because the people that I'm thinking of are probably a little bit older, and therefore their crowd is a bit older, and therefore it's harder to do that show. I suspect is a big chunk of it, and this probably is really interesting music coming through that people under 30 know about and are interested in. But I also do think we need medium-sized venues. We don't need like I'm sure it's great that they've built another huge venue, that Fortitude Valley Music Hall. I'm sure they'll hopefully sell tickets and it'll work and stuff. But a lot of the music that I want to see, 150 people, like of overseas touring artists, 150 people would want to go and see it as well. And I think it would feel a lot nicer for an American artist to play to 150 keen people in a full room than to play to 150 people in a room for 500. And that's why I think some of them are playing the Junk Bar that only fits 50 people. And they might do 2 shows there because they can know that if it doesn't work, if they only sell one show, then they just cancel the other show and it works out nicely for them. And they can know that this, the Junk Bar is an amazing space where, the owner is the sound operator and actually likes music. Sometimes you feel like that's not always what they're into. And it's the same is true for playing as a local band, like not when you're playing with Americans or overseas artists, but like it's 80 people is a big crowd to me. Like we need good venues that have a capacity of 50 to 80, rather than a venue that has a capacity of 500. I don't know. Too often I've seen friends play to empty shows at the zoo, or being that me playing to an empty show at the zoo. And I think the other thing is that I feel like in the last 10 years or more, it's gone from being venues had a crowd and scenes had a crowd to bands having a crowd, maybe. I'm sure scenes and bands still have crowds, but when I first started playing music in Brisbane, there was no social media. but I could stick up a couple of posters. If I played a show at Rick's, people would come to the show just because they knew they could go to see music there.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas now, you get less of that.
Yeah.
You know, there's less spaces where you can guarantee having music playing, and I think sometimes, you know, it is a bit much to ask people to hand over money to see music they don't know about. But if there's a free venue putting on music and people are going to listen to it, that's actually pretty special and pretty rare.
I feel like 10 years ago, or maybe a bit more, like there was, you know, like when the Hangar was around and Waiting Room and places like that, like even if you weren't super into who was playing, you know, you would go and have a good time, and it would at least be worth listening to, even if it wasn't your thing. And,
I think those places have been really formative for Brisbane. I think I started going to shows right at the end of 610, and that sort of showed me, that like there are other ways of running venues, there are other ways of putting on shows. And ever since then, it just someone else has popped up and had a go at doing that sort of space, and I think it's really, really great. And it's kind of nice to see that people also kind of wax and wane in their connection to the music scene. Like the people that were putting on the Hangar 10 years ago have started putting on a monthly night, you know, in another space. Very different feel because it's, you know, licensed and it's a small venue and whatever. But these people are still making music, and you know, they might have not played music for a while because life gets in the way and whatever. But it's kind of lovely to see that happening again.
Something I always like here is, and it's like this in Southeast Asia too, there's like so much more cross-pollination between scenes here than like particularly Melbourne or Sydney. It's so much more siloed, I think, in those places. And here, like, people go to different kinds of things and play in different kinds of bands. And
definitely. I can't understand why someone would play in 3 bands that all sound the same.
Like,
I can totally understand why you could play in 3 bands because you've got 15 friends or whatever, and you want to do something with each of them. But why do 3 projects that are all the same? And then similarly, I think if your listening tastes are diverse and your friendship group is somewhat diverse, then it kind of makes sense that you'll put on a show with your friends and there'll be, you know, 2 or 3 different aesthetics covered in the space of a night, but they'll all be of good quality. Like I remember, again, going to music shows early in Brisbane, and I'd see like a scummy punk band, and then the next thing would be like Shiver Like Timber, who's like this beautiful folk singer, and so it kind of made sense then. Like I don't like playing a show where things don't work well together. But I think a show working well together doesn't mean 4 bands that all sound the same. Because that can be really tiring, particularly 4 of them. You know? So, I think there's an art to a really well curated night out, and I think there's also just chance where people just play a show together and it just works really well.
We were talking about Philippines before we started recording. Have you played there before?
No, I'm interested in what it would be like. The Philippines have a really, really strong covers music scene. Like most people playing on cruise ships, I believe, are Filipino. Like amazing musicians. But it's interesting how hard it can be as an outsider to find out about scenes in other communities. And I wonder whether there have been times when it's been easier. I was just reminded about there's this CD. There's a record label that connected to Room 40 called Someone Good, and Lawrence put out a record once called Add to Friends, which is like all mostly Australian and Asian, vaguely pop, vaguely experimental musicians. And the whole idea behind that collection was they were all people that he met through MySpace. And like for all of the poor graphic design of MySpace and a lot of bad things about it, like I don't know, there hasn't really. I did so much CD trading through MySpace. And like granted that's like my coming of age as a musician. Like I started making music out of school, really, and that's what was around. But there's not, it's not really a community. Like, there's not a way to make a global community like that as easily.
Yeah.
Which is a shame. I wish there was other ways of doing that.
Yeah.
The band that I had started in like 2011 with Kelly called Mahal Kita. Mahal Kita means I love you in Tagalog.
Yeah.
And so we have huge... So we like put out like 3 songs really roughly recorded, but all these Filipino people like it, not even realizing it's a band.
Yeah, yeah.
So if we ever go over there, there's a scene for us. We just
Yeah.
they may not know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think like the Wire magazine is really interesting how they can latch onto a scene and explore it and write about it. But then it's not, but then you read about it and you're like, oh, but where is this? I've been there and I can't see it.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'm sure people would say the same if they came to Brisbane,
Yeah.
So, but I definitely feel like traveling through Europe, it's been easier to find scenes underground. That's what I found, like being on holidays in London for a couple of months. I found it really hard to find local music that was good over there.
Yeah.
I think just some cities it's easier to tap into than other cities.
Yeah.
So,
London's expensive too.
yeah,
That's
expensive.
probably
People don't have space to actually rehearse. It's very much like in a city, but on a grander scale.
Yeah.
Like no wonder everyone makes dubstep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all the great bands that I saw when I was in London were all touring from the States or something. There was no local supports ever.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So whereas you wouldn't get it out in Australia, like partly because we've had those local content laws. I think you have to in theory, but yeah. So
yeah. Do you have anything coming up that you want to plug or like?
hopefully by the time this is put out, we'll have a single coming out for our country practice.
Cool.
Hopefully we'll have some remixes as well. Everything is... Yeah, you never know how things go with timelines.
Yeah.
So country practice has like a whole album we've kind of almost finished, but we've been a very slow project in the sense that Andy travelled away for another year at least once we started. But it's been really nice having something that we're sitting on and take our time with. I suppose you could appreciate the same thing with leaving.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah. Like, technically, there's nothing really in the pipeline. Like, I haven't even got any gigs booked at the moment. But that's kind of nice. It's been nice having a project where people can just ask you to play a show with 2 or 3 weeks' notice and you can say yes. Yeah. No, so both Spirit Bunny and A Country Practice are sort of in a writing, recording, or finishing off stage. But I think I really enjoyed going back to loving how good MySpace was. I love CDRs. And I loved back then I was making an album and then releasing it the next day with packaging.
Yeah.
Now you can do it online and you can throw it up on Bandcamp. But it's not quite the same as just being like, heck, we just finished recording. Quick, get out the CD burner.
Yeah.
Let's start cutting up some cover art and actually doing a real release.
Yeah.
That's, so there's like, I feel like we've taken music too seriously almost, the DIY scene, by getting into vinyl. Like, now you've got to think about 3-month turnarounds or more. You've got to think, can I sell 150 copies? 150 is a lot of copies in Australia.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone, like... Yeah, I feel like somehow we all got convinced that 150 is doable.
Yeah.
And it should be, like, but yeah, it's a lot to convince people to hand over their money to get your record, and you got to keep playing gigs and touring.
Yeah.
And so all those sort of things take energy and time.
Yeah.
So I suppose the short of that is that we have a record that we should have almost finished, but probably will take us another year to bother putting it out.
Yeah.
And Spirit Bunny probably will take another year to finish an album before we even start thinking about putting it out.
So keep an eye out.
Yeah, keep an eye out. I think one of my goals is with Daniel Johnson passing, we just went and sat in someone's backyard and recorded our cover of True Love Will Find You in the End. So I'm going to try and finish editing that and putting that up. So hopefully we'll drop a few small things in the next couple of months. Rather than anything big.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you.
It's nice to learn more about where you come from.
Yeah, it's nice to talk about it as well because you don't think about what you've done.
Yeah.
Like, probably 19 years of making music, which you
Wow,
feel like it's only
yeah.
been a couple of days,
Yeah.
and you feel like I haven't actually done anything. They're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I did play with some people that I like.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been good.
Cool. That's great. Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Porous Borders. If you're interested in exploring more underground music from the Asia-Pacific region, you can check out my YouTube channel, Concrescence Records. You can find the link to that in the show notes. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review in the iTunes store. If you have suggestions or feedback and you want to get in touch, you can email the show at porousborders@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at @ANDRWMH.